We good? All right. Perfect. All right. Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't meet, no, great start. All right. Great. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Ryder. I'm the director here at the Flag Art Foundation. I want to welcome you all to tonight's conversation featuring artists Hilary Harkness, Hiba Schahbaz, Anna Weyant, and moderated by our founder, Glenn Fuhrman. This talk is taking place on the opening day of part 2 of In New York Thinking of You, the group show that you're all in right now, in which Anna and Hiba have contributed extraordinary new works. Hilary was in part 1, which closed last Saturday. 2023 marks the 15th anniversary of the Flag Art Foundation, and it's interesting to look back and see that Hilary's been involved with about 8 projects over the 15 years. This is Anna's second show, and this is Hiba's first round. So welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you here. Just before we start into the talk, I just want to do a couple of items. Just after tonight's talk, feel free to check out Samaya Critchlow's exhibition downstairs. It's her first institution in the United States, and it's the largest presentation of her work that's ever been put together. And then we also have a spotlight exhibition, which just opened today with a new piece by Lauren Halsey. It's a really fantastic new work, and there's an essay by Robin D.G. Kelly that goes with it that's really extraordinary. So now I'm going to turn this over to Glenn and the artists, and enjoy, everybody.
All right. Great, thanks, John, and thank you all for being here. This is a really great and exciting opportunity to have 3 fabulous artists as really an opening for the exhibition, and it's great to have such a essentially sold-out show. It's filled up very, very quickly. But maybe by just way of beginning, if each of you can give a little bit of an intro on your practice and kind of how you came to being the artist that you are, and then we can jump into some questions. So maybe Hilary, you can go first.
So I never talk about where I'm from. This is going to be my first time. It says on my resume, born in Detroit, Michigan, but by age 5, I was living in Kalamazoo, Michigan, halfway between Chicago and Detroit. And when I was 9, they started the school busing to integrate the school systems. So there was white flight of professionals to a community called Portage. And my dad worked for a paper mill, and so I was, Trump demographic to be. I got bused downtown to a school that was probably like 50-50, black, white. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I also remember what we weren't taught about. Like there were conversations that could have been had with students for better understanding, and so I carry this with me, and that's the important thing to know about me now.
Okay, and when did you start being an artist professionally, and just kind of like, you wanted to be an artist when you were in high school as a career profession, or when did it really kick in that you were going to be an artist?
Let's see. I was a violinist. I had one of the best violin teachers in the country. Got him kind of late, and failing at that was like a controlled burn. I did pre-med, and then I thought, if I'm gonna like flush my 20s in med school, I'll just like wander over to the art department. But my dad worked for a paper mill, so I always had the best paper. And then my parents would do projects in front of me and not let me help. So my dad would do these paint by numbers, smelled so good, and not let his 2-year-old help. So here I am.
Maybe you can tell us a little about your path. I'm really also interested to hear a little bit about your trip through China and the influence that had on you as well.
Thing.
Yeah, we're gonna go around. Jump around.
Okay, I'm from Calgary, Alberta originally, and went to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and then moved to China for about 8 months.
How did you end up choosing to go to China? It just seemed like a pretty big move.
Yeah, I was sort of flailing in New York when I graduated, and decided I just wanted to do something really different that I hadn't done before. And I heard of an art school called China Academy of Art there, and I just thought it would be fun to try. And it was amazing, but I couldn't speak the language, so I ended up leaving prematurely.
But how much time did you spend in China?
About 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, 8 months is a pretty long time. So.
Yeah, it was tough to not to speak the language.
And then you left China and came back to New York.
Yes, I actually went back to Canada for a bit and then moved back to New York, where I've stayed since.
Got it. All right, cool. And Hiba?
I'm from Karachi, Pakistan, and I did try to move to Japan back in the day before I came to the US. I really wanted to study traditional Asian painting, and I took all these Japanese classes at the local consulate, and because we had to speak the language, and I failed, and they gave me a certificate for failing on stage. So I never ended up doing that, and I did end up here much later, and been here ever since.
And I'm curious, your studio practices, I think, are similar in that you all work kind of alone and in kind of really by yourself. You don't have lots of assistants. You're not working with a big team. Is that right? Is that kind of the only way you can see yourself working? How do you kind of, what's your environment like where you make your work?
Starting a factory.
To your factory.
I work alone, so just me at home.
Hiba, do you have any assistants?
I don't have any assistants. Sometimes someone will come in and help me cut an installation. Thank you. It's usually like a family member who's in college, needs a job. But mostly it's just me, and I'm a lot, so I can't imagine anyone there, but I'm open to finding a factory.
Hilary, same, correct.
Well, a couple years ago, I had a complete rotator cuff tear, so I did get some help on stuff that I could be helped with. But I have worked alone for my career, and no one can help me with cross sections. Like I don't, it's just painting light sources. It's all out of my head for that type of thing.
Can you just talk a little bit about how you choose what to paint? I mean, you kind of seem to go through these bodies of work where you're kind of doing a series of things, whether it's a group of battleships with sexy Navy women in all kinds of fun episodes along the boat, and lots of different ships and series like that, and then that's kind of, then you move on to something new. How do you kind of come up with what you want to paint, how long that body of work is going to be? Is it all storyboarded out? Is it more just one work at a time and you just kind of keep going? How does that process work for you in terms of what you're painting?
So I like to work on one painting at a time. In 2017, I was in the Met Copyist program. I had the idea that I wanted to copy a Franz Hals because of his economy of stroke, and some of his figures look like Chuck Close, and so it was going to be loaded. But I wound up painting a copy of Winslow Homer's Prisoners from the Front. And standing in that room in the American wing for several days, listening to what the Met's audience was saying and who was coming through the doors and what they responded to. At one point, you know how everyone goes on a date at the Met or you just go to hang out? A group of young black men, or possibly teenagers, came into the room, and there's a statue by Ward. It's a bronze of like a recently freed, formerly enslaved man. However, he has shackles on and he looks beat down. So it's a possible heroic nude, but if you look close, it's sad. So the guys walked in, they screamed with joy. They were so bored by this like wing full of white art. And then, I just heard them all say, oh. And my wife, Era, is here. She's African American. Her family was stopping by, cheering me on. And so for the Winslow Homer, I changed the race of the proud assistant Union soldier to African American, and then just kind of went with it. Nobody said anything as I did that. But reading more about that painting, he had specific markers, like on his hat, identifying what troop he would have been in. And it was a all white, segregation was in the Army until like the late 40s. So I started developing a story for how would this painting have come to exist, and how would this black soldier have wound up in that uniform. And it kind of went from there, had some surgery, and then I wrote 2 novels. They are pulp fiction. I have not published them. But in researching these novels, I wanted to figure out, like, how would an African-American free family get a lot of money in the early 19th century? Like, how would a black collector have money to commission this painting by this other Winslow Homer? And so I really had to do a deep dive on, the economics of the start of the country, and then the evolution of race law is fascinating.
So you're really doing background work on it before you're painting, and really trying to do a lot of research to kind of understand really what the reality of the works would be, what some of the specifics could be, to be most based in reality as possible, even though you're obviously fictionalizing them.
Yeah, and I'm studying the current paintings. A lot of them are set against a landscape background that most are by Shishkin, a Russian 19th century painter. I put my own spin on them, but when Putin looks at them, he foments racism, homophobia. I want him to see some like gay black characters in his landscape. And I also believe we are all one. And so, like,
I'm curious, in these images where you're painting homoerotic acts from World War II battleships, or in Civil War in the military where there's love going on, that clearly is your commentary not revisionist? Are you thinking about this stuff was really going on behind closed doors, or more just this is more kind of a what if from today's perspective? Like how are you thinking about that?
I always put myself in it, and there is a lot of documented. A lot of straight guys did get it on in the military because it's so boring, and then it's so stressful. It's just bad times. So
like, I'm not really gay. I was just in prison. I was gay while I was in prison.
yeah, it was like that.
Too.
Yeah, and like I thought of those. I didn't have the word non-binary, but I think of those early sailors as embodying both genders in some way, and people just saw them as lesbians, and I want to stop talking.
Okay. Fair enough. Anna, just jumping to you, how do you decide what to paint? Because you really do cover a lot of ground. You have different muses that you've painted. You obviously do these beautiful floral works, one of which is outside a show. So what excites you, and how do you choose what you're going to make at any given moment when you're starting a painting?
I don't know. It feels so random to me, but it must not be. I think I'm very attracted to like really soft objects, like flower petals or skin, and I like really dimensional objects too. So I always play with lighting, contrasts.
I mean, when do you meet people and say, "Ooh, I would love to paint her," or I mean, do you have that kind of a feeling at times?
Yeah, I'm actually Eileen and Julia in the front row. I'm painting both of them currently. So, and that's how I met one of my good friends.
And how did the painting of Venus Williams come to be?
That was just we sort of knew each other, and I asked if she would let me, and she did.
Cool.
So she was just another face that I was really attracted to,
And when you sat down to make the floral painting for this show,
yeah.
do you have flowers in front of you? Is it more imagined? How does the iconography come together? Where did the bite come from?
Okay, so those are paper flowers and then real flowers that were in front of me. And one of the flowers had nibble marks in the leaf from a bug. So I just, as I was painting, I thought it would be funny if there was also a human bite.
I love it. I love the humor presence in much of your work, including just joy. You know, some of those paintings of Eileen from your last show at Gagosian, where she was just so happy. I mean, you just look at those paintings and you smile, which is kind of a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I want them to be fun because otherwise, what's the point?
And you can have a little bit more narrative aspects in your work. Are you thinking about storytelling when you're making your paintings, and maybe a little bit about the painting of the lion that we all saw right when we came in here?
I think the paintings can be narrative, but often my miniatures are more narrative. And I suppose miniature comes from illuminated manuscripts and book art, so that's just sort of part of the vocabulary I learned how to paint with. But often, it's usually not a story. It's usually a feeling or some like high-flung idea in my head or something, or just an image that I see, which I translate onto the paper or the canvas.
And are the women always you, based on you? I mean, do you view them as kind of autobiographical?
I think some of the paintings are autobiographical and more autoportraits, but I do feel like, you know, the woman, like any other creature that I'm painting, can take a more symbolic form. And in the larger paintings, I always feel like she's more of an avatar. But I grew up drawing myself because we didn't have like nude models. So I tend to refer to myself more than other people.
And just the nudity in your work, I mean, obviously coming from Pakistan, it has a different impact than if you came from Cleveland, right? I mean, how do you view the presence of nudity in your work as a statement, or as how do you think about it?
For me, it felt sort of natural. Like I was always naturally motivated, inclined to painting the body, and I also started painting mine really young, so I felt like I was documenting it over time. But definitely, society did not see it that way. So I ended up here.
So is that one of the reasons why you're in the U.S. is because you kind of had to if you wanted to paint what you were painting?
I did paint back home too, I just couldn't show it. Yeah. And I think when you're showing your paintings, you open up in a different way because there's like a conversation which starts, which is not just in your head. Like sometimes painting in isolation, which I did for a long time, doesn't really help the work develop.
And has it led to any issues with your family when you're showing the work and being in the U.S.?
Yes, a little bit, but you know, things are better.
You know, I'm curious how you use social media, either in the work directly or as a reference or as inspiration, professionally, you know, lectures or deals with people interacting. How has social media played a role in your work?
I go back and forth with it. I didn't have it for a long period of time, and I have it now. And I don't think it really affects my work significantly. but I think it's fun to be able to, like you said, share work. Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, I think it is kind of amazing that you can post a new painting and say, this is in my show at the Flag Art Foundation, and you can get literally instant comments from somebody in Shanghai, like, wow, awesome painting. I mean, just like that ability to kind of touch the world is kind of incredible as an artist, I would imagine.
I think it's so cool. And it's also, in a way, power. Like you have this voice, and like you said, you can reach communities that you otherwise wouldn't be able to instantly reach. I think it's fascinating.
Hiba, how about you? You seem a little bit more prolific in your posting and even showing works like really of art making. Do you really paint in those dresses that you show yourself painting in?
Vajra is nodding yes. Yes, but it's actually my oil painting dress is a really old nightie, and I don't know why it looks like a dress, but it's pretty gross. Thank you. Last week, a few weeks ago, New York Mag was coming to photograph in the studio, and they called me and they're like, could you wear the pink dress in this post? And I'm like, you want me to wear my nightie? They're like, it's the only one which hits your knees, and we don't want you to look like a blob, because I'm short, so like everything is super long otherwise. So I do paint in dresses, but mostly because I've had some back issues, so I'm more comfortable without pants on.
Hilary, what about you on the social media front?
It causes me a lot of anxiety. I think Jerry Saltz posted something. Was it Christmas era? And I could not look. And I should have been there, being like so grateful for all the attention. And before I had a chance to see, there's like 4,000 comments or something, it got taken down.
Because of the subject matter?
Yeah, somebody reported it. I mean, it was Mel Bachner being raped by a female cow with a strap on. Yeah.
I can't imagine why they took it down. So that's because you don't paint men.
Oh, I love painting men.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys paint much men? Anna, have you ever painted a man?
Before a couple times, if he's fallen asleep.
But in general, it's not something that you're interested in.
It's really scraping the bottom of the barrel.
And Hiba, same for you?
I have painted men once or twice, like literally once or twice. But when I was learning how to paint faces, which I did after I moved here, I painted pretty much all my family members, including my dad, which he hated. He has this really long beard, like super long. And yeah, he wasn't impressed. But I did paint like all my brothers and everyone, but I don't really paint them normally. And not that I love men, but I feel like I share more, like I feel like women, I share more stories with women, so I paint more women.
Right. And when you do sign on to Instagram, who do you get excited to check or see a posting by?
Vogue, especially with the Met Gala coverage. Usually these days Instagram is not that exciting because they're just showing you so many ads that like my scrolling time is now minimum. It's kind of depressing. I'm looking for the next thing. If anyone has anything.
Hilary, anything though? Jerry, you check Jerry?
Jerry ate my feed
What does that mean?
Like I go on and like half the time my head explodes, and I feel like he's too soft on people a little bit. Not individuals, but I would like Jerry to give advice to critics. He's a specialist at writing. Leave it to the painters to talk to painters. And like I appreciate you, Jerry, wherever you are, but Florida or some, I don't know where he is, but I feel that there are ways to write with integrity, and Roberta Smith has it. You know, New York Times, like they're good, and then some of the younger critics, they might also be artists. They might, you know, there should be a list of don'ts for art critics, I feel.
I'm curious what the list is.
Okay. Do you hate the artist? Don't, you know, personally, don't write about them. Like that, like stuff like that, just so you can keep it like clean and objective. And are you gatekeeping a community? I don't know, lesbian, S&M, minority, something like if you're doing something like just check the motives.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, back in the day, there's no social media, and so when people started writing about me, they had no idea who I was. And I wish I had been asked, actually.
I'm curious, we talked a little bit before about, you know, the evolution over your careers of changes of being a woman in the art world. Have there been noticeable changes? Is it the same? Is it better? Are there lots of things that still need to change in your view? I mean, it seems like there has been, you know, right now, Cecily Brown and Lauren Halsey are the two hot shows at the Met. You know, the Tate just named a new women director. There's so many positives that have been happening. Obviously, this whole show is an all-female show, which is not unique. You know, have there been some substantive changes in your view, or Hilary, anything? You've been around the longest.
I thought it was really cool that Roberta Smith like changed her mind about Cecily Brown. That was really cool.
Yes. I mean, since I moved here, I feel like the art world was a little narrower. I mean, I think there are a lot of great American women painters who have been recognized, but I do see there was a moment when I looked around last year and all the really cool shows were all like women. And there was so much excitement around it. I don't know if it's going to last forever, but I think it is an interesting moment where so many painters have been women. So.
For sure. You know, it's interesting, especially as you become more prominent and more successful. You know, being an artist today is and can be a real business. It's a career. The numbers get bigger. You know, do you think of it as a business? I mean, do you have a mentor or somebody that you speak to about business matters, whether it's interacting with your gallery, thinking about what shows to be in, what shows not to be in? Anna, do you think about some of those issues?
I do. I feel really lucky. I have a lot of mentors. I talk to my dealer a lot and other artist friends. And yeah, I saw Will here, and I just want to give him a shout out, Will Cotton, because he was one of my first mentors and has been an amazing friend and confidant. So thank you.
I don't know. Will, I think Will started the new drawing series, right? But almost every artist not every, so many artists that we've shown here started drawing with Will in those drawing sessions. So pretty amazing that the number of artists that you've touched. But and like fashion is now becoming so much more integrated in the art world. I mean, are you guys inspired by that? Do you want to be on a Dior sweater?
Only if it's cashmere, because then I can wear it. I think that, I mean, I like the fashion collaborations that I see. I don't like all of them. It's not a blanket like, but I think some are more successful than others. Some are more thought out. And I think Kennedy did a bag with Dior, right? And that was kind of interesting because her work is so sculptural and the bag was so sculptural. So I think it can be cool, but I also feel like the the negative of social media, at least when I joined it, was that there was so much, there was such a push towards like, oh, Gucci wants to do an interview and then they want to sponsor this ad and all of this stuff, and it's enticing. But I think if you haven't fully formed as an artist, it can like really take you away from your purpose.
I mean, that's a great point, and I'm curious because the three of you are all still very young. You know, how do you balance and how do you know about when you're ready to do different things? Are the things that you're feeling like you're taking a big risk by doing sooner? You know, things do move at pretty rapid fire pace these days, and you know, how do you process whether you want to do something now or maybe wait a little bit down the road?
For me, I always try not to take, I take my practice very seriously, but I also try not to take myself too seriously. And so I think there's a little bit of a stigma around artists doing uh, collaborations with fashion companies. And I can understand why. But I also just, if I think it's going to be fun or exciting or something cool to do, then I just do it.
I'd love to do a Hermes scarf. I'd like to do a fragrance. I'd call it Sailor Mouth.
Come on, stick it out there. It's on the record.
Yeah,
what else?
no,
Okay. Hermes scarf and a fragrance.
Yes, I'm ready to collaborate.
I like it. I wanted to just get into briefly maybe some psychological aspects of being an artist. Hiba, you have talked openly about self-doubt, your own, you know, kind of criticism of yourself, and how, you know, sometimes you're your own worst critic. You know, is that kind of part and parcel with being an artist? Is it, do you think that's something that is unique to you or not unique to you at all? How do you overcome it? Do you have somebody that you can work through to kind of come to the studio and give you confidence in the work before you show it to somebody else? I mean, how do you manage some of that yourself?
Well, I meditate for an hour every day, at least every day, before I leave the house. So no one sees me before I'm completely calm. But I do have a lot of self-doubt, and I mean, I hate to say it because it feels almost silly sometimes, but it takes me a really long time to show paintings which other people feel are complete. Like I tend to hoard my own paintings and then like let them go really slowly. And part of it is just not feeling ready sometimes to take that step. I don't feel any doubt when it comes to like the fact that I'm an artist or what I do. I feel like very, very safe in that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hilary, any thoughts on that?
I paint from a place of despair.
But I know you have your wife's support, and that helps. I would imagine. No, I mean, does she look at work in the studio and kind of give you feedback, or?
Oh my God. So she works from home now, and she wakes up many hours before me, and there are interventions in my studio when I wake up.
From her.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
She's at Black Abstraction on Instagram. If you want to see Hattie the Skull, the ancestors are talking through her.
Very cool. Anything on your end?
I definitely have moments of self-doubt all the time, actually. But the more I've done it, and also the more really bad old works have become public at auction and stuff, the more I've learned to just let it go. With current work, as I'm working on it, it's a nightmare. But generally, I think I've got better with it.
I mean, do the auction results, are they difficult to manage? Do you like kind of have anxiety leading up to the auction? Do you follow them? I mean, I'm sure you try to block them out, but they have to have some kind of an impact.
Yeah, for me, the numbers aren't as big a factor as if it's, I think, a bad painting. That's where I start to get really in my head, and I think like, oh, I should have taken time and fixed this color, fixed this hair. So yeah, so it definitely affects me, but not the results so much as the image that's become public. Because a lot of work that has been at auction were things like private gifts and stuff that I didn't think would be available to wider audiences.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest critics for some contemporary artists, and I think it's a little bit of more of a male thing, is that there's just way too much art out there and they can't edit their own work, and they literally think every painting they painted is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
How do you think about editing, deciding really what is good enough to release? Do you have things that you just paint over and start over again? You know, do you scrap some things halfway through when they're not going to make it? I mean, how do you think about the editorial process for your own works?
I edit a lot of my work. I would say like a third of the paintings I finish get chopped up into little pieces. But I envy that self-confidence that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it leads to better quality work out there when your model. You won't have as much regret at future auction.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, Hilary, your work takes so long and it's so meticulous. I mean, do you kind of know along the way if something isn't, up to par, or you kind of know along that it's okay?
There's a hole in my resume. 2016, 2017, I sunk 2 years into a painting that I could not make right. And so that hurt. But when I was in my late 20s, I didn't think I was going to have a career. So I was taking finished paintings and just putting them out on the sidewalk. And and then the next day I'd check and make sure there were no splinters of a painting. Like generally they were gone. And whatever I gave to the sidewalk, it was like the impulse was freed back to me, like compost almost, and I'd make a better, more realized, completely rethought version.
But are those works that you put out there? Are they by you? Are they signed?
They're not signed. I've been thinking of like doing little sketches and saying, hey, if you live in San Francisco.
Do you have one of these?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like, the asks for charity auctions, and here, make a painting and we're going to sell it for $25. So like somebody has a painting, they ask for $25.
Yeah, the charity auction thing is something that we don't even have to talk about, but I mean, it's such a burden for a lot of artists. So it is, in a way, it's good that you're a painter that makes very few works and that is very substantial, because you don't get asked to donate a painting, but it can be an onerous on a lot of artists. I mean, I think we can take a few questions from the audience, because I know there's probably a lot out there. So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question about your feelings regarding a painting that you sell, for example, for a minimum amount, $500 in the beginning of career, that goes to auction. You're well aware of this, Anna, for $1.5 million. So how do you feel about that? Are you happy because your number has gone up at auction, or are you angry that, my God, I mean, someone bought it for $400 and it's worth $1.5 million?
Well, for me, I have moments where I think I wish I kept it, and I would have so much money now if I had kept all the works I sold for $500. But also, I think I could have bought Apple stock when I was like 5. So I think that's a hard way to think and a hard way to live, and so that's probably something I have to actively get over and actively try to live without resentment or
And look,
bitterness.
of course, it does help your current market. And, look, there are no shortage of artists who have proselytized to younger artists to try to keep one work from every show if you can afford it, or one work from every few shows if you can afford it, just because, keeping your own work in some ways is your own 401k plan, and it's your own insurance, to protect against, or not protect against, because you want your values to go up. And if you can keep your own work, it's a great idea. Not every artist can afford to do that, but if you can, it's a great idea.
More importantly, if you have your own work, then you can lend it to group shows, and a dealer is not in charge of what show you're in.
Yes, ma'am. Who's your goal studio visit? Good question. I know yours. I think we should be able to make that happen, but.
Same.
Same. Okay, we
Yeah,
can have a
actually,
party.
Like his generation of Yale's, like Louise, they have not been accessible to people from my generation, and so I try to be accessible to other artists. So he's inspired that. So that's why I'm handing out gifts of sample size mediums in the back room.
I'm so excited.
Hiba, what about you?
I would probably go to see Francesco Clemente.
Makes sense. Cool. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, thanks for the talk today. I have a question for Glenn. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the relationship you saw between the artists talking today and deciding factors in how you pulled the piece for the show.
Okay, it's a good question. I mean, we first of all, this show is put together as a big we, led by the team at Flag, Caroline, John, and Madeline, and they really drive a lot of the selection. I would say there are some aspects of it that we do as a team, and we work together. John ultimately decided, or was leading the decision of which works were in part one and which works were in part two, and which works would kind of fit better together. I think this body has a little bit more loose, abstract kind of works, although still plenty of figurative works. The other version was more figurative. Sometimes it's also just the reality of time. Some artists say, I won't have the work ready in time. I need a little bit more time to get the work done if it was made for the show. That was the case with Anna, who we were so thrilled she made a work just for the show. And so we gave her as much time as she needed, or at least until the show opened. So that was kind of how it all came together. In terms of the overall list of artists, it's really just the artists that are making work that in the moment we think are really interesting and exciting, and we want to put together and show. Many times it's artists I'm not that familiar with, and again, John and the team are constantly introducing me and introducing new artists into the mix. As well as just other artists that we know that have been around, and we just wanted to include in the show, like Lubaina Himid. We wanted to include her. She was also in part one, so she's one of the few artists that we put in both shows, and she just sent the drawer piece right behind you for part two. Any other questions? Yes. Is that a wave or is that a question?
What's something you're excited about coming up? I don't know whether it's like your career, your practice.
I am going to I can't pronounce it, Bafo? I am going to the Bafo residency on Fire Island this summer with my wife as an equal artist. She has her own artist talk. So this is like a dream come true. And we're bringing our cat. The cat is invited. Thank you.
I just had a show in Paris, and so it's just sort of an exciting time because after every show the paintings change, and so I'm kind of really excited about not leaving the studio or seeing anyone until I leave for Thailand in July. so I can just make some new things.
I am excited. Hilary gave me a new medium to try, so I'm excited to try that.
A new medium, like the type of paint or what?
Like something to mix into paint.
Okay.
Just now before we
The
came
technical
out.
stuff that artists can talk to each other about is fabulous. Learn from each other.
Yeah.
Will?
Oh, you have to explain it. I'll show it to you after.
Hiba is allergic to terps and that type of thing. So I brought in Rublev Oleo Gel, which is just linseed oil and silica. And it doesn't make your paint all greasy. And I think it's a brand John likes, so maybe he uses it. Yeah.
He recommended that.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank the three of you for doing this. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming out. And if you haven't seen the show downstairs on the way out, please walk down. There's a brand new piece from Lauren Halsey, which was installed today. It looks amazing. So thank you for coming. All right, guys.